It was another ordinary day at the FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. The agents moved with practiced precision, their eyes scanning through case files, handling tips, and reviewing surveillance footage. The steady hum of the office was only broken by the occasional clack of keyboards and the low murmur of discussions. Suddenly, the doors to the main lobby swung open with a force that silenced the entire room. Heads turned, eyes widened. A tall, familiar figure strode into the building, a man whose name was synonymous with power, controversy, and headlines. Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, had just walked into the heart of the nation's law enforcement. At first, the agents thought it must have been a mistake. There were no Secret Service agents in sight, and no prior notice had been given. Was it a security drill? A misunderstanding? Special Agent Jennifer Hayes, a seasoned veteran with over 15 years on the force, stood frozen for a moment, unsure of how to react. She was used to high-profile visits, but this was something different. This wasn't a routine meet and greet. The man who had just entered the building had been at the center of some of the nation's most polarizing events. "Agent Hayes?" a voice called. She turned to see her superior, Assistant Director Mark Stevens, looking as perplexed as the rest of the staff. "Go greet him." Jennifer swallowed, straightened her uniform, and made her way to the entrance. As she approached, Trump stopped, his sharp eyes locking onto hers. "Special Agent Hayes," he said, his tone direct but not unkind. "I need to speak with your director." Jennifer hesitated for a fraction of a second before nodding. "Right this way, sir," she replied, motioning toward the secured elevators. As they moved down the hall, whispers started to spread. Agents exchanged looks, some unsure of how to approach this momentous and strange visit. Was this a political move, or something more? Inside the director's office, Director Samuel Carter was in the midst of an important briefing. He looked up sharply when the door opened, his eyebrows furrowing at the sight of the former president standing in the doorway. "Mr. Trump," Carter said, standing up quickly, offering a handshake. "What brings you to the FBI today?" Trump shook his hand but wasted no time. "I need your help," he said plainly, his eyes scanning the room before landing on Carter. "It's personal." The director blinked, clearly caught off guard. Personal? What could possibly be personal for someone who had been the commander-in-chief? But Carter remained professional, his curiosity piqued. "Of course, sir. What can we assist you with?" Trump reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out a tattered piece of paper. He placed it on the director's desk. Carter's eyes fell on the faded photograph. It showed a younger Trump with a group of FBI agents, all standing in front of a building. But one of them stood out. An older, tall man with a gentle expression, his arm draped around Trump's shoulder. Carter raised an eyebrow. "Who is this?" Trump's voice softened. "This was Agent Richard Grant. He saved my life when I was young. I never got the chance to thank him properly." Agent Hayes, who had followed Trump into the room, leaned in slightly, her curiosity piqued. "Saved your life, sir?" Trump looked at the photograph, lost in the memories of his youth. "I was just a kid, making terrible decisions. I thought I could take on the world, but Agent Grant, he stopped me from doing something that would have ruined my life." Carter and Hayes exchanged a look. They had never heard Trump speak like this, vulnerable, almost humble. "I need to find him, or his family," Trump continued, his tone growing firm yet pleading. "I owe him everything." Carter studied the photograph, his mind already racing with questions. "Mr. Trump, we'll do our best, but finding someone from decades ago with just a picture is not easy." "I don't care how long it takes," Trump insisted. "I will not rest until I've found them." Hours passed. Special Agent Hayes dove into old files, searching through archives of reports, trying to match names to faces. The trail was cold. Agent Grant had retired in the 1980s, and there were no recent records. But finally, after much searching, Hayes found it. Agent Richard Grant had passed away a decade ago. But there was a next of kin, his daughter, Lily Grant, living in Washington, D.C. Agent Hayes walked back to Director Carter's office, where Trump was still waiting, lost in thought. "Sir," she said, her voice hesitating slightly, "I have good news and bad news." Trump's eyes locked onto her. "Give me the bad news first. Agent Grant passed away 10 years ago." For a moment, Trump seemed to deflate. The weight of the news hit him hard, but he didn't let it show. He nodded slowly. "And the good news? His daughter, Lily Grant, is still living here in D.C." Trump stood up without hesitation. "Then let's go find her." It didn't take long to get to Lily Grant's apartment. When they arrived, Trump stood in front of the door, his heart pounding. He had never met this woman, but he owed her father everything. A gentle knock echoed through the hallway. The door opened a crack, revealing a woman in her mid-40s, her face a mix of confusion and shock when she recognized the man standing before her. "Mr. Trump?" she asked softly. "What are you doing here?" Trump took a deep breath, holding up the old photograph. "Your father saved my life when I was a young man. I never got the chance to thank him, but I need to tell you what he did for me." Lily looked at the photograph, her eyes welling up with tears. "My dad?" she whispered. "He saved you?" Trump nodded. "He did, and I owe him everything. I came here today to tell you that your father was a hero." Lily's voice cracked as she invited him in. She sat down on the couch, holding the photograph close to her chest. "My dad was everything to me, but after he retired, there was nothing. No recognition. No honor for all he did." Trump sat beside her, his eyes dark with emotion. "I'm going to change that." A few days later, a ceremony was held at the FBI headquarters in honor of Agent Richard Grant. The media was there, but Trump made it clear this wasn't about him. It was about a man who had saved a life and whose legacy had been forgotten by many. Lily stood proudly at the front, next to Trump, as a plaque was unveiled, reading, "Agent Richard Grant, 1940 to 2009. A hero whose courage will never be forgotten." As the crowd clapped, Lily whispered to Trump, "I can't believe this. He never wanted anything like this." Trump smiled, the warmth in his eyes evident. "Some debts are too big to be forgotten, and some heroes deserve to be remembered." Afterward, Trump arranged for a scholarship fund in Agent Grant's name, dedicated to helping the children of law enforcement officers. Lily received the news with tears in her eyes, knowing her father's legacy would continue to touch lives. Months later, a young recruit sent Lily a letter, saying he had joined the force because he had heard about her father's story. "I want to be like him," he wrote. "I want to be the kind of officer who changes lives." When Lily read the letter, she couldn't help but cry. Her father had never been forgotten, and his legacy, just like his kindness, would continue to ripple through the generations. Weeks passed, and Lily Grant began to feel a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The ceremony had given her father's life the recognition it deserved, and the scholarship fund had breathed new life into his legacy. But there was still a part of her that couldn't quite grasp the enormity of what had happened, how a single visit from Donald Trump had turned everything around. It was one quiet evening when Lily received another unexpected call. This time, it wasn't Trump. The voice on the other end was calm, authoritative. "Ms. Grant, this is Chief Marcus Holloway from the Washington, D.C. Police Department," the voice said. "I'm calling to inform you of something extraordinary that has come to our attention." Lily sat up straighter, unsure of what was coming. "What is it, Chief?" "We've reviewed the details of your father's service, and we've come to a decision," Chief Holloway continued. "We've decided to posthumously award Agent Richard Grant the Congressional Medal of Honor for his service to this country." Lily's breath caught in her throat. The Congressional Medal of Honor was the highest recognition that could be given to someone who had served the public, and her father, her quiet, humble father, was about to receive it. "I don't know what to say," Lily whispered, her voice trembling. "He never asked for anything like this. He never even told me how much he had done." Your father's actions went beyond the call of duty, the chief said. He didn't just protect people, he inspired them. That's why we're recommending the award. Lily closed her eyes, tears flowing freely now. It was more than she could have ever hoped for, more than she had ever imagined in her wildest dreams. Her father's name was being etched into the history books, his memory immortalized. Days later, a formal announcement was made. The nation would soon honor Agent Richard Grant. The ceremony would take place at the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., with Lily in attendance, and none other than Donald Trump was slated to present the medal. Lily stood at the front of the packed room, her heart pounding in her chest as she watched Trump step onto the stage. There were no cameras this time, no speeches for the press. This moment wasn't about politics or appearances. It was about the recognition of a man who had quietly shaped so many lives. "Lily," Trump said as he handed her the medal, "your father did more than serve this country. He saved lives. He saved mine. And for that, he deserves this." Lily's hands shook as she accepted the medal, holding it close to her chest. She looked at the medal in awe, unable to find the words. All she could manage was a soft, "Thank you." Trump stood beside her, the weight of the moment settling on both of them. "He was a true hero," Trump said quietly, his voice filled with a respect that hadn't been there before. "And now, the world knows it." The ceremony was simple, but it left an indelible mark on everyone who attended. People had gathered not for a political reason, but because they recognized something real, something worth honoring. A man who had done his job quietly, with integrity, and who had impacted a life in a way that would never be forgotten. Lily left the ceremony feeling lighter, as if a great burden had been lifted from her shoulders. It wasn't just the medal that had made the difference, but the acknowledgement of her father's greatness, something she had never truly understood until now. She glanced at Trump, standing beside her, as the applause echoed around them. As they stepped off the stage, Trump turned to her, his voice low. "I meant what I said, Lily. Your father didn't just change my life. He changed the lives of so many others. He was a mentor, a protector, a leader. We could all learn a lot from him." Lily nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I've learned more about my father in these past few months than I had in my whole life, and that's a gift I can never repay." Trump gave her a small smile, one that seemed almost tender. "He didn't need you to repay him, Lily. He did it because it was the right thing to do. That's what true heroes do." As the weeks rolled by, the legacy of Agent Richard Grant continued to grow. More police departments around the country began to recognize his impact. Memorials were set up in his honor. Scholarships were established, and his story was shared far and wide. Not just as a law enforcement officer, but as a man whose quiet, selfless acts of kindness had shaped the world in ways no one could have imagined. And in Washington, D.C., the Grant family received one final, unexpected gesture. A new community center was being named after Agent Richard Grant, a place for young people to learn, to grow, and to follow in the footsteps of the man who had taught them all, without ever asking for anything in return, that kindness and bravery could change lives. Lily stood in front of the new center, her heart full as she looked at the plaque. It was her father's name, followed by the words, "A hero who protected and inspired us all." She whispered, "Thank you, Dad." As she stood there, she realized something profound. It wasn't just her father's legacy that had been restored. It was a legacy of justice, of humility, and of a life well lived. And it had all started with one small act of kindness from a man who believed in second chances. It was a lesson the world would never forget.